Hello friends, it's me, Rob, once more, and as I do every year from coming back from a major convention, I just came back from GameHoleCon in Madison, Wisconsin, from the 8th through Sunday, the 12th, and it's definitely going to go down as my most expensive convention I've been to. Not for the right reasons, but we'll get into that. First of all, my whole experience with it. Again, it's a top-notch convention, run from the ground up by people who are very smart, who know how to leverage money and influence and connections, and have thrown together one heck of a convention. This was the 6th GameHoleCon and the 3rd one that I've gone to, and the 2nd one in which I've run games for. It had a couple of landmark moments for me, but I'll kind of break things down as I go. First of all, the people who were there were great. Some fantastic people. I saw some old friends of mine from a couple different walks, and I had some fun. I tied myself down in order to get there and not have to pay the $65 cost for the full weekend, or the full convention experience. I ran 14 hours worth of events, or I intended to. I ran 2 3-hour blocks of playing Massive Darkness. If you've seen my channel, you've seen me do solo plays of Massive Darkness. I ran the game rather than playing in it, so 6 hours straight of Massive Darkness. Let's just say I'm not going to be so keen to play it anytime soon. It's a fantastic game, and it's a lot of fun, and my players had a lot of fun with it. But it got a little much. I was scheduled for 2 events of 2-hour blocks of playing what I call Gunslinger Munchkin, which was, I took 14 different decks of Munchkin. From disparate ones like Munchkin Booty, playing mostly pirates, to Munchkin Fu, playing monks and ninjas, and the Good, the Bad, and the Munchkin, cowboys and Indians. Classic Munchkin, Pathfinder Munchkin, Shakespeare Munchkin, Space Munchkin. You know, a wide blend. And somebody would just basically pick a deck, and everybody would have a deck, and we would play and find out who was the best. Was it a superhero? Was it a space marine? You know, whatever. The one event that I had for Thursday, the opening day, no one showed for it. Sad. In hindsight, that probably wasn't the best game to run, because right across the hall from me, there's an atrium where everyone was eating or playing random games. Across the hall was what's called Dorkstock. It is John Kovalick's, basically his social hour, where they ran a whole bunch of Munchkin, and Steve Jackson Games has kind of schmoozed into it too, because they were running Fantasy Trip demos and other Steve Jackson games. So yeah, people weren't so keen to come over and play my game when they could go over there and play with the actual people who made the game, which I should have thought through a little bit better. So yeah, that was basically 2 hours where I wanted to play a game, but nobody showed. The 8 hours of commitment, I still honored. I was there the whole time, so it was an 8-hour block from noon till 8, and the end of that was 6 hours of Munchkin, or of Massive Darkness. And I met some great people, played with some fun people, had a good time. Everybody enjoyed seeing all the miniatures and playing around with stuff. Everybody was fantastic, and I really enjoyed playing with the folks that I did. They kept me on my toes, and yeah, in general, we did a good. We had fun with it. That's about all I can say about that. Nobody died. Nobody's character died, although it got close. The first game, they had their healing cranked up to the point where I couldn't inflict significant damage. In the second game, the group just worked together perfectly and synergized, and they did a great job and had a lot of fun. Matter of fact, they managed to make it through 2 scenarios, one from the book and the other one I just kind of whipped up. I'm like, okay, here's the situation, go get it. And they did a great job. They didn't quite finish it in the end because we ran out of time, but it wasn't because they weren't going to. It was a little tense in a couple situations, but they did a fantastic job. So, great players, great time. The second group had experience with other Cool Mini or Not games, Zombicide, which a lot of synergy there, so that was cool. It was also the first time that I ran the Traveling Hat Club, my role-playing game, a very, very stripped-down, one-page version of a role-playing game that anyone can play with 10 coins. And playing with strangers, people I didn't know. It wasn't optimal. I was playing with a boy and his mom and dad, and they had some role-playing experience, which was cool. I also had I don't know if they were husband and wife or boyfriend, girlfriend, but also very skilled, very veteran players. Which was a type of test. Wasn't the type of test I was kind of anticipating because I had advertised that it was for kids, and I ended up having adults. I also promised a copy of the game to everybody, which I was happy to give out. So basically the game was Little Timmy's Day Out, and it's on the back of my one-page adventure. The idea is your kids from the village of Meadowbrook, or Meadowwood. Yeah. No, Meadowvale. And in Meadowvale, it's on the verge of a magical wood called Random Wood. And it's a good magic. It protects the people and provides for them, and the people respect and honor the wood. Everybody has their life tied into the wood, including the kids. The kids appreciate that the wood is their protector, and they play in it, and the wood seems to like them and take care of them, to the point where the parents don't care about monsters running off with the kids very much. A little bit, but not much. So the kids found out that a little boy, Timmy, who was only 6, told people that he was going to go out to Monster Cave, a cave that had once housed monsters but had been cleaned out by adventurers years ago, and nobody thought there was any danger in it. And kids were repeatedly... a tradition in the village was to dare kids to go to Monster Wood and leave their mark inside the cave. And the further into the cave you could leave your mark, the braver you proved to be. So I let the players... Oh, and I really went all out for this, too. I had my... I'm not sure we're there. My golden plastic coins that I use for various role-playing games. That's disturbing. I can't find them. Oh, well. And I gave each person a stack of 10 of those so that they could throw their coins. Because of the Traveling Hat Club, if you are really good at something, it is your specialty and focus, you flip 8 coins and hope for heads. The more heads you get, the better you did. Some tasks require you to get so many heads before you succeed. If you get more heads than that, you do really well. And if you are skilled but not fantastic at something, you get 6 coins to flip. And if you really don't have any skill but you just want to try, you get 4 coins to flip. You always get to try something. And it's a game for people who just really just want to try different things and not be bound in by, you know, strict rules and you know, the game telling you what you can and can't do. And the players appreciated that, and I got some great people who were, you know, really good at just trying things. But I gave I had a gift bag, and each one was a different color. And in it, I had a hat and a script. The script is the character sheet they got to use to, you know, that said what the type of character, the princess or prince, the artist, the joker, the tough kid. You know, they could come up with names and things, but you know, it gave the role, it gave their skills, it gave their specialty, and some gear that they started out with. Outside of the gear they started with, everything else was a prop. Everything they encountered in the dungeon, I had a physical item for, which was fun. The boy played the tough kid. His dad played the Joker, which was funny because I had a Joker hat. It was kind of comical. the mom played the apprentice wizard, and the husband-wife team played the artist and the critter kid, the kid who always was hanging around with animals in the woods, and had a natural skill with dealing and negotiating with kids. Now, because I was gone for a few days, my cat missed me terribly clearly. So she's going to be a nuisance. So anyhow, they all played together pretty well. I tried to make sure I gave them different scenarios where they were all going to have something to do and could approach each trial from a different angle. When they started out, they didn't know where the monster cave was. None of them had ever been there, so they had to figure out how they were going to. The critter kid had a dog, and they just had to get something that was scented so that he could try to follow Timmy. And they went around, everybody had a chance to try to figure out what to do. The tough kid, being a young boy, thought he'd go and talk to Timmy's mom. And that didn't turn out to be so good because Timmy's mom flipped when she found out Timmy was alone in the woods. So they had to try to talk and walk that back. There was some really good role-playing that went on. And, for the most part, people were receptive. It was a good time. It was shorter than I thought because I left a lot of wiggle room in for people to try different things, or if I had had really young kids, all the zany things and distractions that they could bring up. They actually ended up plowing through the whole thing in less than 2 hours, which was a lesson to me, that's for sure. I had another scenario, but by this time the one boy was getting bored. I'd say he was about 11. And his mom and dad were like, okay, he's losing it, and then the husband-wife combo politely bowed out as well. So I didn't get to run for the full 4 hours, but I think I delivered a pretty good game, explained the highs and lows of the system, and I gave them all a copy of the game. They did end up saving little Timmy and having quite a bit of fun doing it. Everybody got to do something, which was cool. So more testing to do, more work to do certainly, and we're going to hopefully have something out by the end of the month that I can put up on Pay What You Will on Drive-Thru RPG or something. Probably about a 35-40 page role-playing game with a bit more nuance than my one-page version has. You did miss me, didn't you? So, those were my games. You may have noticed there was one of the one game of the Gunslinger Munchkin that I was scheduled to do today, which is Sunday. However, Saturday I got into an accident. I was blinded by the sun and I ended up hitting somebody, T-boning them with my cars in the parking lot. So, like I said, this was an expensive con for me. So yeah, we'll be paying for that. That's what insurance is for. But it's just one of those sad things. So nobody was hurt, thank goodness. In hindsight, that's the thing I'm most thankful for. But it's a pity it happened at all. So that the car is not ruined or totaled, but it's not safe to drive over any distance outside of town. It's just not going to happen, so I wasn't able to get back down to the con for Sunday. It was very unfortunate. Now, games that I was in, I can relate back to you. I got to play a game of Adventurers League right away on Thursday. Their new Into the Borderlands, or Into the Border Kingdoms, I believe it's called. And the adventure was a very, very simple, go to the town, go to the tavern, hear about undead, undead attack the tavern, you fight off the undead, the townsfolk send you to the defiled graveyard, you go to the defiled graveyard. Unfortunately, what I find about your average Adventurer League game is because the way they're constructed, there's nothing that really speaks or is tailored to your individual characters, because you never know what your group is going to be composed of. I played a halfling rogue, first level, just grabbed him off the table, And I was, very effective. Even against skeletons and such that in 3rd edition I would have been completely useless against. I was able to help the group out quite a bit and work together with folks. The downside is we had people that really would never have worked together. But we had to because that's the way the groups go. Almost everybody in the group was 1st level, but we had a 4th level cleric. If you know anything about the Forgotten Realms, he was a cleric of Kelemvor, the god of death, but he was twisted and was pro-undead. It was weird and kind of uncomfortable. The person playing him was just a fount of personality, that kind of person who will gleefully take up the entire conversation time of a group. And he was going on and on about this stupid cabbage soup that he wanted his character to have, mindless of the fact that we started a little late because the DM showed up late, and we only had so much time to get through this scenario. He would have happily nattered on with any NPC about this and that, which was frustrating. So I did what I could to drive the story forward and get us involved in the story and get people motivated and stuff. But I don't like Adventure League very much, in case you can't tell. The other thing, too, is that depending on who your Dungeon Master is, they can be very up and down. In my case, the Dungeon Master we had was actually pretty good. He was engaging, he tried to make the combats interesting, and he knew the scenario well enough. The downside was he was more than willing to indulge the person who was going on and on. Obviously, a veteran Adventure League player for a long time. And he, like I said, dominated the experience, which I think some of the other players... The other thing with the group was just stupid. We had 3 paladins, 2 clerics, and a rogue. No arcane spellcasters at all, which was fine. We weren't suffering for it. And the paladins were fine. Nothing, amazing going on there. No, wait, three paladins and a fighter and 2 clerics and me, who was a rogue. And I just picked the rogue on a lark, just because it turns out usually in those games there aren't a lot of rogues, so you can really stand out. Almost everybody either wants to do the big damage with an arcane caster, or they want to... The other thing, too, is that if they're short adventures, you rarely will run out of spells. You just throw a few cantrips here and there, and then just liberally sprinkle in your blasts. So I find arcane casters generally are very well represented. And then, of course, you always have fighters. Fighters in 5th edition are quite powerful, so a lot of people like that. And then you're going to have more casters and stuff. So at any rate, the adventure went fairly straightforward. It wasn't anything complicated. Two combats. One in the tavern against a decent number of skeletons, but hardly anybody got injured. The DM's dice were pretty cold, and our group worked very well teamwork-wise. The paladins were shield and board, knocking the skeletons over with their swords, and then we all just nailed them when they were down. It was almost silly how easy it was. And then we went to the graveyard, and again, more fighting. I did have a good moment when we were fighting. Some crawling claws made themselves evident, and they were attacking the group. And one paladin had a warhammer, and he just trotted up to get one off the back of the experienced cleric and whacked it like it was a polo ball. Beautiful strike. Sent the crawling claw out, and the DM's like, yeah, even though he doesn't have a mouth, you just can almost sense that it's screaming as it flies through the air and over the fence. I said, well, maybe it's using sign language to scream. Hilarious, but you had to be there, I guess. So at any rate, we won, we triumphed. I didn't take a single point of damage. We took relatively little damage, but that's good considering most of us were 1st level. The cleric even, went out in front and was like, I'll take it because I'm 4th level and I can take it all, but in the end it was fairly straightforward. Nothing really big to report. It was serviceable, like many Adventure League games. So, after that, then I ran my games, and that was pretty much all of my first day. The next day, however, was a nice day. I got there a little bit later because I knew that my event was at 10 o'clock. I didn't dare go for an early 2-hour block probably another Adventure League game. So I got there and got some time to talk. Went through the dealer's hall. Now, of course, my home game store is represented, Chimera Hobbies. The owner, Bob, is a good friend of mine. I enjoy talking with him, chatting with him whenever. We've played at the same table. He loves gaming, and he's a darn good business person when it comes to the niche market of hobby games. It's not by accident that he's still around when so many other stores have closed down. So I got to chat with him a very little bit because he was very busy. I went around to some of the other places, but I saw the same things that I usually see at almost every convention. There's places that are selling secondhand game stuff, but I already get an employee discount since my wife works for Chimera Hobbies, so I get my stuff a little bit cheaper already, so I didn't see anything there that really hooked me that much. Then I went around to kind of the corner where they had the artists, which I thought was unfortunate. They were kind of stuck in a corner of the dealer's hall, which didn't serve them very well. At the end of it was Terry Pavlett, who I've gotten to know a little bit through social media. Terry, of course, has been in the gaming industry as an artist for a very long time. He's a little prickly. He's an old guard who doesn't like being jerked around and deliver nonsense. He's seen it all. He's seen hucksters and scam artists, and he's seen good days where he's gotten really good commissions and stuff. So he's a fantastic person if you want to talk about gaming history from the perspective of an artist. And he's also, a very, very capable artist. There are differing levels of artists who are out there, and not everybody who's in the industry and sometimes even revered within the industry is fantastic. Terry is a very good artist who does a lot of different things. So I was able to pick up one of his ink pieces. This is a neat little picture of some rock mephits. Well, that's what I'm going to use them for at any rate. I always kind of wanted them as a monster to use mephits and smaller elemental creatures for certain games. So I'm glad I have that print, which is nice. Another artist that I'm not as familiar with, but was pretty funny, is Jason Braun. One of the creature theme for the game for the convention was the Odiug. They seem to feature one every time. They get John Kovalik to design a plushie. I should have had him for this video. I really should have, but I kind of gave him to my son, so it's cute. Doesn't have the tentacles of the Odiug. It has kind of like eye stalks instead. He had a different take on it, but this was cute. He made this this black and white of an Odiug, and crushing somebody, but he included a brown marker because what other color do you need when you're doing an Odiug, right? It was kind of funny. A lot of Jason's stuff, quality-wise, I wasn't too thrilled with, but this was a buck and it was very clever, and he's capable of making some really good stuff. Some of his stuff was rather good quality, but he just had some of his stuff that was only okay. The other artist that I saw, I can't remember her last name, which is killing me. Her name is Elena. She makes stuff for Wizards of the Coast. She does some of their art for their cards, and she is amazing. She does such amazing things with color and fantasy-scapes and fine art, just brilliant stuff. For my wife, I got a playmat from her, which she has tucked away somewhere. I'm not sure where it is, but and she was nice enough to sign it for me. Some artists are really hard to approach because they're just a little different. Artists see things a little bit different. She's very nice, very approachable, and she's just so talented. So much artistic talent, more artistic talent than I have in my whole body. She's got in the end of her little finger, but just brilliant. And I got to chat with her for a little bit, which was nice. There were other folks there too, but I didn't dwell a great deal on them because I was there to play as much as I could. I didn't buy a great deal. Somebody had a grab bag thing, so I grabbed a couple of old Traveler books. Traveler is a game that I'm kind of pursuing, but it's kind of hard to find the main books. One of the things that I thought was interesting is one of them is actually autographed by the game designer, Mr. Miller. But yeah, I'm fascinated with Traveler. I kind of would like to run a game using Traveler, but I need the core books for that. I didn't spend a lot of time playing much on Friday. The major thing that I did after after running my game, it was 2 o'clock. I was looking for something else to do, and I saw that there was another Adventures League game open, the sequel to the one that I'd already done. I'm like, well, I've got a character. I can advance him up a level, run him through a second successful adventure, and yay, I'll have a second level Adventures League character. Hoorah! Maybe I can do something with it sometime. And then I bumped into somebody else that I've become acquainted with. His name is Doug Cole. And if you followed my Omnus Critic videos, I did a review of Doug Cole's Dungeon Grappling book, which is a nice supplemental book that you can use with a variety of different games if you want to include realistic grappling in games. That's usually not a forte of most role-playing games, and he actually has nice rules that more realistically represent grabbing a hold of somebody and killing them with your bare hands, or subduing them with your bare hands, giving you more options, which is, quite clever. Doug has had an interesting last year. He's created his own fantasy role-playing game, which heavily borrowed from 5th edition, but took a lot of his own rules and moving parts and created his own game. He's created his own background and world, which is based on Viking culture. He is fascinated with Viking culture. He himself studies Viking martial arts, including skilled use of the axe and the shield. If you want to get a long conversation, just get him going about the mechanics of shields and role-playing games, and you're going to lose an afternoon. But whip smart. And a really nice guy, but incredibly enthusiastic about his stuff. He is his own biggest fan by a long shot, and that's good. You need to be. And I bumped into him. I didn't know he was going to be at the con, which was a pleasant surprise. But when I bumped into him, and I said, "Hey, remember me?" And we started chatting. I found out that he was running his own game, which he actually got into. He got in with Steve Jackson Games. He's a great self-promoter, and they liked his stuff, so they asked him to create an adventure which supplements their recent Dungeon Fantasy release. And he did. It's called The Hall of Judgment. It's, again, based in his Norse world. This game also works with his Dragon Heresy game, but he was running it using GURPS Dungeon Fantasy in Kovalik's Dorkstock area. And I had already bought a ticket for the Adventurers League thing, but when I found out Doug was running that, I'm like, oh. And he told me he had a space. I'm like, oh. So I went and I traded in mine and got a spot at his table and played. The characters were a bit overpowered. He gave us 250-point characters, which I guess are supposed to be the standard characters for Dungeon Fantasy. Admittedly, while I have the Dungeon Fantasy box set, I haven't read it cover to cover. 250-point characters can be very, very powerful. Not God level, no, but these are characters that can easily mop up several weaker foes by themselves, especially if they have the right arms and armaments. We didn't have, huge armor or anything that we could ignore threats around us, but we easily rolled all the opposition that came before us. I don't think Doug was quite as familiar with the challenges or the combat beast that I ended up controlling. Conan, eat your heart out. I was the young, powerful warrior with a signature weapon that I could just smite anything that came up. In the end, they weren't even letting me roll for damage. It's like, you just crush it. Okay, I'm just using the character you gave me. And that was really the case. So we had, it was a good time. We had other fun people involved in the game. We had some of the magic of the game. We walked through some kind of challenging, a challenging scenario where we came into a haunted village and had to find the blight that was creating undead and forcing them to walk in the Viking wastelands. All in all, a very favorable impression of this Hall of Judgment. Steve Jackson Games, Hall of Judgment, written by Doug Cole. So far, I approve. The adventure was fun. I don't know if I would tackle the default characters in the same way. Probably make a little bit weaker characters to give them more of a struggle. But, we were able to take on an entire town's worth of undead by ourselves. So, but he puts so much lore into it. The game is so rich. I can't help but give it the very highest regard and recommendation. I don't have it yet. I'm almost certain to buy it now, though, especially since it supports a friend of mine. But it's a good book. I recommend it to anybody who's looking for, especially if you're looking for something you like Viking themed stuff. It's quite good. And also his Dragon Heresy, I got to thumb through that. Layout is excellent. Doug has fantastic art. It's very, very good. Hardcover, nice books. He has the introductory out, and he is getting ready to try to put out more books that'll make it a full-fledged 3-book complete role-playing game to stand with any of the other ones that are out there. As long as you're interested in, like I said, the Viking culture and so on and so forth, you're going to get something that will feel very true to the source material he's taking it from. Although it's not purely out of, say, Norse mythology. He's also added some Germanic in there and to kind of muddy the waters a little bit to make it more fantasy themed. But he does a very good job. Can't say enough about him. That's one of my highest regards for a creator, the work ethic and the quality he has put out. Very good. As a matter of fact, I introduced him to Bob, the owner of the Chimera Hobbies. I'm like, this guy really knows what he's doing, and Bob was nice enough to put up some of his stock in his storefront at the con. So that's a good relationship, and I hope it flourishes. I only hope for the best from Doug, and of course for my friend Bob. Now get over here. You're gonna. All right. You good? Okay. So after that game, it was a little after 8, and I was thinking about going home, and I was just looking at the different booths that are in the front of the atrium in the lobby, and they have a variety. At one end, they have all the different podcasts, fantasy podcasts that want to be represented at the con, which is cool. An area where you can paint miniatures, and there are folks who show people the intricacies on how to paint. And for a little bit, you can walk away with a cool painted miniature that you did yourself, which is awesome. There was a LARPing group called Lost Hope who were demoing. Always fun people. I always love the concept of LARPing. I wish I had time to do it, and I wish there was a group that was really convenient to go to. If there was one here in Fond du Lac, I would love to be a part of that, because I think LARPing is one of the most pure forms of role-playing. You want to make everything safe, of course, so you're throwing little foam balls and beanbags and things and hitting each other with restrained blows from boffer weapons. But you make decisions, more in line with how a character would be at the time, because you're that character for all intents and purposes, and you don't want to die. You don't want to get smacked with a stick and then be told that you're unconscious and can't fight anymore or anything like that. So, there's something that's really nice about, hi, you are mugging for attention, aren't you? So that's those guys are cool. And the costuming they do is amazing, especially considering some of it is combat ready or near combat ready for the fighting styles that they do. There were some folks who were dressed up in pirate garb. There was a guy who did a fantastic Tokenian orc, just really good. There were some gals supporting local roller derby, and apparently they had a board game that was themed for roller derby, which I thought was cool. I'm not a huge roller derby enthusiast, because Sorry. It's just a little more violent for me. I don't know. For a guy who likes professional football, I just can't really get into roller derby. I think mostly because it's just too easy to get hurt. At least in football, you have your feet under you, you can brace and dodge, and yeah, people are going to get hurt sometimes, but in roller derby, you had the roller skates and some of the impacts they take, and I know they wear pads, but I don't know. I don't know, it doesn't do it for me. But hey, I respect the gals who do it because they're tough, they play a hard game, and they do it for the thrill of competition, so that's cool. I can appreciate that. And they're very nice ladies to talk to. But then I was walking along, and I was looking at the different games that people were promoting. 66 Studios had one, and there were a couple others that I honestly can't remember because I have long since gotten past the point with the collection of games that I have. It takes something really dramatic to catch my attention. There was one called Gearworks that looked like it was an interesting game. One of the guys who created it was explaining how the game worked to me, which was fine. It looked like it was an interesting game that would get you thinking and strategizing against your opponents. And then I saw a guy's name, and it just rung all kinds of bells. Jeff D. If you're into classic games, Jeff D's name comes up quite a bit. If you are specifically into villains and vigilantes, he's a co-designer of that game. A superhero game that stands up next to, almost anyone except for like maybe Marvel would be the notch above because of the brand name and the familiarity so many people have with comics coming as a direct result of Marvel. But villains and vigilantes is certainly going to be one of the biggest ones out there. And he was just sitting there. The man himself is responsible for a whole bunch of games, and I understand the new the Tecumel Empire of the Petal Throne. I guess he's helping to bring that back into print editions. And his like I said, you look anywhere and his name is everywhere. He's an illustrator, and he's passionate about games. And I sat down and started talking to him. And I admitted that I hadn't played Villains and Vigilantes, my experiences with GURP Supers and Champions. And Marvel's original game from TSR back in the day, and the Saga card game. So I really didn't have any experience with Villains and Vigilantes, which kind of was inspired itself by Dungeons and Dragons. So it's kind of like a retro clone, except it came from way back in the day. And originally it was based on statistics, very much like D&D, but then it had lots of advantages and powers and perks and stuff. And I sat down and started talking to him. And then his partner on it, Jack Harvey, came along and brought him supper. And those two gentlemen sat with me for over an hour and a half. And I interviewed them. They listened to me and they answered my questions, and I had a ton of questions. Because like I said, I have a huge amount of respect for people who make the games and made the games that I love. And even though I don't have any experience with their game, I could see how much they had passion for game design, superheroes, and making this whole thing happen. It's been a troubled franchise. It had legal issues, ownership issues of different aspects of the game and characters and things like that. And now Jeff and Jack have control of the game. They've launched into a third edition that they got through Kickstarter called Mighty Protectors, which I bought. And they were nice enough to autograph for me. I will do another video down the road about what we talked about, because quite honestly, my mind was kind of blown. Those two guys together, we talked deeply about things like core game design elements, the state of the role-playing game world, and also of the comic book and superhero universe and the direction that it's gone into. And they're so genuine. That's one thing. They didn't do it. They were sitting there eating chimichangas and everything and chatting, and it's just like, I'm just firing away these questions, and it's like, they're real. They're not coached. They're not trying to sell me on anything. They're just saying, this is what we did. This is why this is the way it is, and this makes sense to us. We wanted to create a simulation. We didn't want you to have to tell a story and fill in things for yourselves. We wanted to have a game that anybody can pick up, and it works as written. It's not broken, nor does it have to be house ruled and everything. The earlier versions needed errata. We've got a tight game here, and all the design elements that went into it, and a lot of things to be really excited about. I am very, very grateful for that Friday night where I got to spend all that time with two game designers who have seen it all since the early, the golden days of role-playing games. And this looks like it's going to be a fantastic game. I can't wait to do a character witness on it. That will be fun. And also, as soon as I'm done with one of the campaigns that I'm doing now, which could become part of a TPK, switching games, I think I will do Mighty Protectors as the game that we play, because it looks really good. So then, Saturday, and that was yesterday from when I'm shooting this. Friday night, I drove through snow, and that was ugly, because there was not a massive amount of snow, but it was in parts heavy, and it followed me. So I was driving through the storm, the entire length of the storm, from when it started till I got home. It was snowing the whole time. It was a scary trip back. There were times I couldn't see the lines on the road anymore. Not that I ever lost control or felt I was losing control. It's just, visibility wasn't so good, and there were a couple of times I had to be reminded where I was by hearing the rumble strips on the side as I was driving over them. So, a little nerve-wracking. That's why I don't like driving at night. Never did. But, yeah, that wasn't fun. So Saturday, I couldn't wait to get going, but I overslept. Ugh. So I didn't get out until 9, which was fine. I didn't have any events. I just, lost my chance of one event. And then I got to the con, and I had the accident in the parking lot. The guy I hit, nice guy, really just tried to make me feel, at ease. We swapped our information. There was another guy, he's like, hey, I'm a claims adjuster. You want my phone number too? Cool. What happened. I don't have any problems with witnesses. So we took his information, and that guy left, and I found out that my car was still working just fine, and I parked it and went into the con. And I was shaken. It wasn't a pleasant experience. I went around and I talked to people in the dealer's hall again, and I was happy because I found an event. A chance to play with Stefan Pokorny, who is the head sculptor and, for all I know, the owner of Dwarven Forge. So I knew his game was going to be interesting. He's kind of a little eccentric, which I appreciate. He goes all in. When he's running a game, he is all in. He gets hats, and he gets really into character, and it's, I expect it to be a lot of fun. So I went and I talked to people. I met up with Eric Tenkar, my friend who was in the pond with the Frog God Games right now. He designed their Swords and Wizardry Light for them. Good guy to know on all things from old school gaming. He is definitely one of the people who are high up on the list as far as knowledge and influence in the culture of older period gaming. And we talked, we had lunch together, it was really nice. But then I went and I played Stefan's game, and he was playing a somewhat modified version of First Edition D&D, modified mostly to let the lower level spellcasters cast spells so they didn't feel useless, which was nice because I got stuck playing a magic user. And we had kind of a gonzo adventure. We befriended a troll who came with us to help fight. We used the troll to get by a ballista and some lizardmen archers, letting him be a pincushion so that we could go forward and do what we did best. I helped keep the group alive because while I didn't go and attack, because a lot of the fighters had exceptional strength and were really high stat-wise, I just stood in the back and patched people up as they needed to stop them from dying, because he had a negative hit point limit on not just dead at 0. So I stopped people from dying and got some healing. People got healing going, and in the end, we didn't succeed. We ended up. He had this tower construct from his castle set, which he could break apart level by level, so we could go through the entire level, which was really cool. Visually, it was stunning. He had a selection of miniatures, which were kind of just play quality miniatures, very heavily used. Some of them were broken, and you know, it was like playing in your uncle's basement, playing D&D with somebody who's been doing it for a while. Of course, I've been doing it for a while, so I could appreciate all of that. But we also had a range of other people. Some were, you know, kind of felt really uncomfortable expressing and emoting, and I'm playing the reserved spellcaster. Oh, also I dressed up for it too. I had my gray top hat and my coat with tail, my steampunk sentiment coat, a tuxedo shirt, dress slacks, dress shoes. I look pretty good. Well, yeah, I've been feeling very good after the accident, but I was looking pretty good. So, and I had the white gloves on. He's like, "Well, you look like a magician, so you're fine." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I kind of do." So he spun this adventure, and we played along and fought lizard men, and we freed some orcs, and you know, most of the way through the battle, we were fighting this witch who, you know, everybody wanted her gone because she was an evil witch. And the witch sent a lightning bolt ripping through the party and killed some people outright, because first level characters meeting lightning bolt doesn't usually end well. And I kept everybody alive. Eventually, the troll was the heavyweight, so he basically helped us get through a lot of the encounters with us without us taking a great deal of damage. And later on, I got Stefan to admit that his original concept was that the troll was supposed to turn on the group, but then he kind of decided to change things up in case other people had heard that was the encounter. And he's so over the top. Bob the Troll was hilarious. He was all, and Stefan is just, he's fun. If you ever get a chance to play with him, he's he's a hoot. And also because, you know, he is the head of one of the finest 3D dungeon elements games. His layout is fantastic. He had the whole 3D dungeon set up. When we actually got into the dungeon crawl, he seemed like he was a little surprised because I had suggested we take out the tower above the dungeon. I'm like, do we really want to have any enemies above us when we're trying to get out of the dungeon or trying to escape there between us and freedom? That seems like a bad idea. So we cleared the tower first, and then we went back down. And you know, that's when we got lightning bolted, and our party was badly damaged. But we drove the witch off. She didn't die, but we did well. And in the end, he was giving out physical treasures. And so there were a bunch of metal coins. And he basically, okay, split it up. That's for you guys. So I ended up with a little pouch full of actual metal coins from his game, which is very cool. They stamped them themselves. They're from his own in-world Valoria. And they had little Valorian symbols, and we got gold and silver for them. It's really cool. I mean, it was a very classy thing to do, and I don't expect to come away with anything other maybe than a character sheet from any one game. But Stefan's an awesome guy. What can I say? At the end of that, then I hooked up with Bob, my friend from Chimera Hobbies, and we were going to go to the Arcaneum auction that they always have. The minds and the pocketbooks behind GameHoleCon, they're very charity minded. It's awesome when they do that. Us gamers generally are fairly giving a lot, and a lot of us get into this charity. A lot of the proceeds from GameHoleCon go to charity because, well, let's face it, the people who organize it probably don't see a penny. Anything that they take in would go towards keeping the con going, but also a lot goes to charity, especially Extra Life. And they have this auction where they take some treasures from their collections and offer them up, and any money that's raised goes to charity. And I secretly suspect that for some of these people, they're changing hands amongst each other, and so they know the people who buy their stuff, and that person is probably going to be donating next year. And there were some incredible treasures there. There was copies of the very first sci-fi role-playing game, Starfinder or Star Traveler or something, Starjammer, I can't remember. By Ken St. Andre, the guy who did Tunnels and Trolls, was there and available. It went for over $100. The pocketbooks on these people were too much. I was watching and I'm just like, God, I'd love to have a chance to snag one or two of these things. But this is after the accident. I don't have any money anymore. So I was a good boy and I didn't buy anything at the auction. But the people who were in there were there to buy, and yeah. Some people walked away with some really nice stuff. That's all I have to say. Unfortunately, I wanted to get home while the getting was good. I didn't stay there to the very bitter end, because the last thing that was going up for auction was a wood grain box, original Dungeons and Dragons from the first 1,000 or so that were ever made, with all of the warts preserved for history. It was a very good quality box, and I still haven't found out how much that ended up going for. So I'm going to have to ask my friend Bob, who I left there at the auction. So Sunday, today, I didn't go. Like I said, my vehicle just would not make it. It's not acting right, and the whole trip back, it was suspect. So I'm a little sad that my convention time got shortened, but the time that I did have, I made the most of it. I played in some fantastic games. I have some fantastic stories. I've got new material. I've got a new role-playing game. I've got some new role-playing books for reading. Got some nice art. Met some really cool people. Oh yeah, one last thing I want to remind myself of. Yesterday, after I came in and I was looking for something to do, I bumped into some folks from Fantasy Flight Games, Fantasy Flight Interactive. They had the upper atrium kind of cordoned off, and they were demoing. They have a new digital card game based on their Middle-earth franchise. They've locked down the role-playing game, and now they've made a card game. It's coming out. It's on early access from Steam right now. I was talking with the lead project designer. I think his name is Tim Cook. Super nice guy. Very excited about the project. Art on it is beautiful. Game design seems fairly solid. They have a range of different cards available that you will be able to get. I don't know how monetized it's going to be, if you're going to have to buy boosters or if by playing you unlock everything. They don't have a lot of details hammered out now. From what I saw, the gameplay is solid. How much replayability it has until it's gotten more behind it, I can't say for sure. And I may end up doing a little bit more detailed analysis of it as I go, but as for right now, it's something exciting to look at and to keep abreast of. But that was my experience for GameHoleCon 2018. I'm sad to see it go in the rearview mirror. I've got a lot of cleanup to do afterwards. I got to put all my my Munchkin cards I've mostly got back, but now I have to take all of my Massive Darkness and put that back in boxes and organize that. So that's going to take tomorrow night to do. But I had a lot of fun as a game master. I am now 3rd level for GameHoleCon, my 3rd year. Tomorrow, the next year, I'll be 4th. I'm definitely going back, although I'm going to definitely try to make it so I don't have to keep driving back and forth. That's to be avoided if I can. I'm Rob. Thank you once more for joining me on this little exploration. If you couldn't make it yourself to GameHoleCon, I hope I gave you some kind of a view into what the experience was like from my eyes. It was a hell of a ride. So thank you very much, and I will see you next time I'm feeling reminiscenting here in my basement lair of love. Farewell.